Welcome back to Self-Proofing, AI, Money, and You. I am your guest host, Lala, in for your host, Alex, and this is the show where we get honest about what it actually takes to build a business in the age of artificial intelligence. No hype, no shortcuts, just strategy. Today is episode 6, and the title is Creators Who Rely on One Platform Are Doomed. Strong words, I know, but by the end of this conversation, I think you are going to agree. We are tackling one of the most dangerous beliefs in the creator economy right now, the belief that your YouTube channel or any single platform is enough to build a real long-term business. A lot of creators, especially faceless channel operators, are grinding away, posting consistently, optimizing for the algorithm, doing everything right by the platform standards, and it is working until one day it isn't. So today we are breaking that down, why it happens, what the risks actually look like, and most importantly, what smart creators are doing instead. I have got 2 incredible guests back in the studio with me today. Jordan is an entrepreneur who has built and diversified a content-based business, including faceless YouTube channels, and she has navigated the exact nightmare scenario we are going to be talking about. Jordan, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back. I will say this is the episode I wish I had listened to about 2 years ago. So if you're in the early stages of building on one platform, please pay close attention.
And Dr. Maya is back as well. She is an AI strategist and digital systems expert who works with content creators and businesses navigating this exact crossroads between technology and platform risk. Dr. Maya, always great to have you. Glad to be here. And I have to say, I am genuinely excited about this topic because it is a conversation that has been overdue in creator spaces for a long time. We talk a lot about growth strategy, but not nearly enough about resilience strategy. Resilience strategy, I love that framing, and that is exactly where we are headed. Before we dive in, let me set the stage quickly. In 2026, the creator economy is enormous. There are estimates placing its total value above $500 billion globally. Millions of people are generating income from content, and yet the vast majority of those creators are one algorithm update away from losing everything. Jordan, Maya, let's get into it. Dr. Maya, let's start at the root of the problem. Why do so many creators, especially people running faceless channels, feel perfectly safe staying on just one platform? It comes down to 3 very human tendencies, and honestly, none of them are irrational on the surface. That is what makes this trap so effective. The first is familiarity. When you spend months or years learning the rules of one platform, how the algorithm works, what content performs, what thumbnails get clicks, what titles convert, it becomes a kind of fluency, and fluency feels like safety. You know the language. You do not want to start from scratch somewhere else. That is so real. I remember telling myself, I have cracked YouTube. Why would I mess with what is working? It felt like leaving a known game to go play a completely different one. Exactly. The second thing is early wins. When something starts working, views going up, revenue coming in, watch time improving, most creators do not diversify. They double down. And that is a very natural response. We are wired to repeat behaviors that produce rewards. Right. And in the short term, doubling down on what is working is often the right move. It's only later that it becomes a liability. Precisely. And the third tendency is the one that I think is the most dangerous illusion. Creators start to believe that the platform needs them almost as much as they need it.
Oh, I definitely believed that.
And it's understandable. You are producing content, driving traffic, keeping users on the platform. You feel like a contributor, almost like a partner. But the uncomfortable truth is this. Every platform is owned by a company, and that company's core responsibility is to its shareholders, not to individual creators. So the platform benefits from you, but it's not accountable to you. Exactly. You are a supplier, not a stakeholder. And that distinction matters enormously when things change, and they always change. That's the reframe that hit me hardest when I finally sat down and looked at my situation honestly. I had been treating my YouTube channel like it was my business, but it was never my business. It was a distribution deal I had with a tech company, and the terms of that deal could change at any moment without my consent. That's such a powerful way to put it. A distribution deal with a tech company, because that's exactly what it is. So when creators realize they're in a distribution deal, what's the next question they should be asking themselves? They should be asking, what happens to my business if this distribution deal ends tomorrow? If the answer is, my business stops, that's the problem you need to solve. And most people, if they're being honest, have to admit the answer is yes. If the algorithm tanks my channel, I have no backup. That's a terrifying place to run a business from.
Alex, let's go deeper into your personal experience here. You mentioned before the show that what happened to your channel was the catalyst for everything changing. Walk us through what that looked like.
Sure. So I had been running a faceless YouTube channel for about 14 months. It was in the personal finance niche, budgeting, saving strategies, that kind of content. I had built it up to around 40,000 views per month, which for a faceless channel without a big launch is a solid number. Revenue was growing. I was starting to see real returns. And I remember thinking, this is working. I have cracked the formula. I know the upload cadence. I know the thumbnail style. I know what titles get clicked. Everything felt under control.
It sounds like the perfect setup for a big fall.
It was, because in month 15, everything dropped. I am talking about a 70% reduction in views over about 3 weeks. Not gradually, just gone. 1 week was normal. The next week was a fraction of what I had been doing. Did you know why? No, that was the worst part. There was no warning, no email from YouTube, no notification, no clear reason in the analytics. I had not violated any guidelines. I had not done anything differently. The algorithm just stopped distributing my content at the level it had been. And that is actually very common. It's called an algorithm reset or a niche recalibration. What happens is the platform continuously experiments with how it distributes content, adjusting which creators get recommended, which niches get surfaced, which video types get promoted, and creators get caught in those experiments without any notice. Right. And in that moment, I realized something very clearly. I did not own my business. I owned a pipeline, and one variable that I had zero control over had just shut off 60 to 70% of that pipeline. How long did it take you to recover? About 4 months before I got back close to my previous numbers. But here's what really hurt. Those 4 months with reduced revenue forced me to reassess everything. I could not just wait for the algorithm to come back. I had to actually build something more resilient. And that is the silver lining that sometimes only a crisis can force. Most people do not build resilience until they feel the pain of not having it. Unfortunately, by then, you've already lost time and money. So, in a strange way, the drop was the best thing that could have happened to your business long term. Absolutely. I would not wish it on anyone, but looking back, yes, it forced me to stop treating my distribution channel like my business, and that shift changed everything that came after.
Dr. Maya, I want to zoom out and systematize this a bit. Because Jordan's story is compelling, but I want our listeners to understand the full picture of risk here, especially for people running faceless channels. What are the specific risks that make faceless creators more exposed than most? Great question. And this is something I want to be precise about, because faceless channels carry a specific risk profile that is different from personal brand channels. Let me take you through them one by one. Risk number 1. Algorithm dependency is total. Faceless content is almost always volume-based. You are competing on output, consistency, and SEO, things like titles, keywords, thumbnails, and watch time. Those are all things the algorithm controls. The moment the algorithm throttles your distribution, whether because your niche got saturated, the platform shifted its recommendation priorities, or you got caught in an experiment, there is almost nothing else left in your arsenal. You cannot fall back on community loyalty. You cannot send an email blast to your subscribers. You just wait. That was my exact situation. I had subscribers, but I had no way to reach them outside of YouTube. I was completely at the mercy of the platform's decision to show my content or not. And for personal brand creators, the dynamic is at least a little different. People follow them, not just the content. Right, a personal brand creator has a relationship with their audience that can survive platform shifts because the audience is attached to the person. Faceless channel audiences are attached to the content format and the niche. If the algorithm stops showing that content, the audience has no reason to seek it out. That brings me to risk number 2, limited personal equity. On a faceless channel, your brand is entirely tied to the platform. The name of your channel, the visual identity, the content library, all of it lives on that platform and is effectively only accessible through that platform. So if the platform goes away, everything goes with it. Everything. Views, content, reputation. It all disappears. Whereas a creator with a strong personal brand has some equity that travels with them. People will look for them on other platforms. Faceless channel operators generally do not have that luxury. I remember thinking about this after my drop. If YouTube shut down tomorrow, not that it would, but if it did, I would have nothing. No list, no community, no other presence. Just zero. That thought was genuinely terrifying. It is a scary realization. And Dr. Maya, is that scenario as far-fetched as it sounds? Or are there real historical examples of platforms just vanishing or dramatically changing the rules? Oh, absolutely. Vine had a massive creator economy and then was shut down overnight. Facebook organic reach went from 40% to under 2% over just a few years. TikTok has faced multiple regulatory battles that threatened access in entire markets. Platform risk is not theoretical. It is documented history repeating itself on a new set of platforms every few years. So we have algorithm dependency and limited personal equity. What else is on the risk list for faceless creators? Risk number 3 is increasing content saturation. And this one is accelerating fast in 2026, specifically because of AI. Think about what has happened to content volume. 2 years ago, creating a polished, faceless YouTube video took a team or a significant time investment. Today, someone with a solid AI workflow can produce 5 videos a week that look and sound professional. That is happening at scale, across every niche. So the supply of content is exploding while the audience's attention stays roughly the same. Exactly. The platform has to make harder and harder choices about which content to surface. And when supply goes up that dramatically, the algorithm gets more selective, not less. So the same strategy that worked when your niche had 50 creators now has to compete in a niche with 500 creators, many of whom are using the same tools you are. I experienced this firsthand. When I started my channel, my niche had a reasonable amount of competition. By the time I had my drop, it felt like every week there were new channels running the same format with better production. And I could not figure out why my numbers were declining until I looked at the broader landscape. That is a really important observation. Jordan, you mentioned earlier you wanted to add a 4th risk that Dr. Maya did not cover. What is it? Monetization concentration. And I think this one is the most quietly dangerous of all. When your entire revenue runs through one platform's monetization model, whether that is YouTube AdSense, the TikTok Creator Fund, Instagram bonuses, or any platform-specific payout program, you are completely at their mercy, not just for distribution, but for income. I have seen the Creator Fund payouts on TikTok drop dramatically over just a couple of years as more creators joined. I have seen YouTube AdSense CPMs tank in Q1 every single year because advertisers pull budgets after the holiday season. These are structural patterns that creators have almost no ability to change. And the layered risk here is critical. You are not just relying on one platform for distribution, you're also relying on that platform for how much money each view is worth to you. If both of those factors move against you at the same time, the financial impact is compounded. So it's a double dependency. One company controls both your reach and your revenue. Exactly. And that's the moment where I decided I needed to completely rethink my approach. Not just add a second platform, but genuinely restructure what my business looked like. That's the key insight. Most creators think of diversification as a backup plan, but it's not a backup plan. It's the actual business model for anyone who wants to operate sustainably in this environment. So we have established that single platform dependence is genuinely dangerous, but knowing that does not automatically make people act on it. Dr. Maya, why do faceless creators specifically resist diversifying even when they understand the risk? There are a few layers to this, and they are all worth unpacking because the resistance is real and valid. It is not just laziness. The first and biggest barrier is that building a presence on a second platform feels extremely expensive in terms of time. Faceless channel operators are often running lean operations. It might be one person, maybe a small remote team, spending all their bandwidth on one content workflow. The idea of building another workflow from scratch for a different platform with different formats, different algorithms, different community norms feels genuinely overwhelming. That was exactly my reaction. I had finally figured out my YouTube workflow after months of trial and error. The idea of going through that whole learning curve again somewhere else felt like starting over, and I did not have the bandwidth or the energy for that. And it is not just the time. There's also the mental overhead. Learning a new platform's culture, its SEO logic, what resonates with its audience. Absolutely. There's cognitive load involved. Every platform has its own unwritten rules. LinkedIn is very different from TikTok, which is very different from Pinterest, which is very different from a podcast. Each one requires a period of experimentation before you get traction. The second barrier is fear of dilution. Creators worry that spreading themselves across multiple platforms will cause their quality to drop everywhere. If my YouTube content gets worse because I'm also trying to produce a newsletter and maintain a LinkedIn presence, then I've solved my risk problem by creating a different problem. I worried about exactly that. I thought I would rather be excellent on one platform than mediocre on 3, which is a reasonable concern. But is that actually the trade-off, or is that a false choice? It is a false choice, but only if you approach it correctly. Most creators who resist diversification are imagining it as creating 5 separate content engines, 5 separate content calendars, 5 separate research processes, 5 separate production workflows. And if that is what diversification meant, they'd be right to avoid it. But that is not what it actually has to look like, and I only figured that out after I hit the wall and had no choice but to find a smarter way. Which leads perfectly into the next part of this conversation. Before we get there, though, Dr. Maya, is there anything else holding creators back that we haven't mentioned yet? There's one more thing, and it's a psychological one. Success on one platform creates a kind of identity attachment. You start to think of yourself as a YouTube creator or a TikTok creator, and diversifying means disrupting that identity. That's harder to change than a workflow. You have to start seeing yourself as a media business owner, not a platform-specific content creator. Jordan, that identity shift piece is fascinating. Can you walk us through how that actually happened for you? Because it sounds like there was a specific moment where the way you saw your business fundamentally changed. There was, and honestly, it started with a single question that I asked myself after my traffic drop. The question was, if YouTube deleted my channel tomorrow, what would be left? And the honest answer was nothing. I had no email list, I had no community, I had no presence anywhere else. I had no product of my own. I had a YouTube channel with a content library that only existed on YouTube. That was it. That is a sobering inventory. It was, and that is the moment I shifted from thinking I have a YouTube channel to I have a content business, and YouTube is one of my distribution channels. That shift sounds small, but it changes every single decision you make after it. That framing is exactly right, and it is what I try to get every creator I work with to internalize early. Your platform is your distribution. Your business is what you create, who you serve, and what assets you own. The platform is just one pathway to get your work in front of people. So the practical question becomes, once you've made that mental shift, what do you actually do first? Because I think a lot of people listening have heard this before, and they nod along, but then they go home and they do not know where to start. The first practical shift I made was to stop asking myself, what new content should I create for this other platform? Instead, I started asking, how can I take what I already produce and make it work somewhere else with the least amount of additional effort? That is a completely different question, and it led me to a totally different strategy. Instead of starting 5 new creative processes, I started figuring out how to get 5 outputs from the same creative process I was already running. That is the critical mindset shift that unlocks everything. You do not need 5 separate content engines. You need one engine and multiple distribution pipes coming out of it. Can you give us a concrete example of what that looked like in practice? Sure. I already had a 10 to 15 minute YouTube video process. I was scripting, recording, or sourcing voiceover, editing, publishing. That was my one content engine. Once I stopped seeing it as just a YouTube video, I started seeing it as raw material for everything else. The script became a newsletter. The key points became a LinkedIn post. The audio became a podcast episode. Short clips from the video became YouTube shorts. The whole thing took maybe an extra hour per week once I had a system, but my presence went from 1 platform to 5. That hour is the real cost, not the imaginary cost of building 5 separate creative operations. Once people understand that, the resistance usually drops significantly. That is a really practical reframe. 1 engine, multiple pipes. Let's go even deeper on the actual system. Jordan, tell us exactly how you built it. All right, Jordan, let's get into the actual architecture of your system, because I think this is where it gets really valuable for people. What does your multi-platform setup actually look like today? I break my entire content operation into 3 layers, and each layer has a specific job. Once I understood the job of each layer, everything became much cleaner and much easier to manage. Layer 1 I call conversation content. This is my long-form, deep trust content. It includes my podcast episodes, my long-form YouTube videos, and my newsletter. These are the places where I go deep on a topic, where I share real frameworks, real stories, real analysis. The purpose of Layer 1 is to build genuine trust and demonstrate real authority with the audience I am trying to reach. And when you say trust and authority, what does that look like in practice? How do you know when Layer 1 is working? You know it is working when people consume a long piece of your content and they either reach out, reply to your newsletter, leave a long, thoughtful comment, or make a purchase. Those are signals that someone is not just watching, they are genuinely listening. And that kind of engagement almost never comes from short-form content alone. It comes from depth. That is such an important distinction. Short-form content can build awareness at scale, but depth is what converts someone from a viewer into a buyer or a real community member. Both have a role, but they serve different functions in the business. What is Layer 2? Layer 2 is short-form distribution. This is YouTube Shorts, LinkedIn carousels, Twitter threads, short clips repurposed from my long-form content. The purpose of Layer 2 is not to build deep trust. That is Layer 1's job. Layer 2's job is acquisition. It brings new people into contact with my brand and then points them toward the longer, deeper Layer 1 content. So it's a funnel. Short form captures attention, long form builds the relationship. Exactly. A short clip might get someone curious about a topic, and then they click through to the full podcast episode or the full YouTube video. And that is where the relationship actually develops. Without Layer 2, my Layer 1 content struggles to find new audiences. Without Layer 1, my Layer 2 content has nowhere to point people. And the beautiful thing about this architecture is that layer 2 does not require separate creative effort. Jordan is not writing new content for LinkedIn. She is taking the most interesting 30 to 60 second moment from an existing long-form video and putting it on LinkedIn with a caption. That's all. The engine already produced the material. That is such a clean system, and it removes that concern about quality dilution that we talked about earlier, because you're not stretching your creativity across multiple platforms. You're just distributing the same creativity through more channels. Exactly right. And once that clicked for me, the whole thing stopped feeling overwhelming and started feeling like leverage. Jordan, we have got layer 1, which is deep trust content, and layer 2, which is short form acquisition. What is layer 3? Layer 3 is what I call ownership assets. And this is the most important layer, even though it is usually the last one people build. Ownership assets are things I actually own and control. My email list, my private community, my landing pages, and any digital products I sell directly. The key distinction here is that every asset in layer 1 and layer 2 lives on a platform I do not control. YouTube owns my channel. LinkedIn owns my LinkedIn page. The algorithm determines who sees my content. But my email list, that is mine. No algorithm, no platform policy change, no account ban can take that away from me. The list is the only thing that is truly yours. Absolutely. And once you have a list, you can communicate directly with your audience anytime you want. No algorithm deciding whether you get distributed. If something changes on YouTube tomorrow, I can email my list and tell them where to find me. That is an enormous amount of resilience to add to your business. And the email list is just the beginning of layer 3 thinking. The deeper principle is, what parts of my audience relationship do I own versus borrow? A private community on your own platform, a paid membership, a Slack group. These are all forms of owned infrastructure that do not depend on any one platform's continued existence or goodwill. Dr. Maya, you mentioned earlier that AI changes what is possible here. Can you break down specifically how AI tools help a faceless creator run all 3 of these layers without hiring a full team?
Absolutely. The right tech stack is genuinely transformative for solo creators or small teams. Let me walk through the core pieces. For repurposing long form to short form, tools like Opus Clip and Munch can analyze a long video, identify the most engaging moments, and generate short clips automatically, complete with captions. What used to take hours of manual editing now happens in minutes. For turning a video into written content, scripts become newsletter drafts, key quotes become LinkedIn posts, chapter summaries become blog sections. Tools powered by large language models can produce those outputs in seconds once you feed them the transcript. I use a combination of tools that takes my raw YouTube script and produces a newsletter outline, 3 LinkedIn post drafts, and a thread outline in about 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That is one content engine feeding 5 outputs. And the key insight is this. You're not creating 5 times more content. You are creating 5 times more touch points from the same content. Those are very different things. One requires 5 times the effort. The other requires good systems and the right tools. That framing, 5 touch points from the same content, not 5 times the work, is gonna stick with me. Dr. Maya, is there anything in the stack that you think is underutilized right now? Email automation. Most creators underinvest in it. Once someone gets on your list, an automated welcome sequence that delivers value, builds trust, and introduces your products can generate revenue on autopilot. That infrastructure, once built, runs permanently and does not require a single algorithm to distribute it. Now I want to flip the table a little bit, because this episode would not be complete without talking about the other trap, the ways that diversification itself can go wrong. Because I have seen creators hear advice like what we're talking about today, try to implement it, and actually end up in a worse position than before. Dr. Maya, when does diversification backfire? The most common mistake, and I see this constantly, is what I call platform theater.
A creator decides to diversify, opens accounts on LinkedIn, TikTok, a podcast platform, starts a newsletter, and then produces watered-down, half-finished versions of their YouTube content and blasts it across every channel. The result is mediocre presence on 5 platforms instead of high-quality presence on 1. And mediocre presence on 5 platforms is actually worse than excellent presence on 1 because it dilutes your brand, frustrates audiences who encounter your content for the first time on a new platform, and drains your time without generating meaningful returns. So, just being present somewhere is not the same as having a strategy somewhere. Exactly. Presence is not strategy. Strategy means every platform you are on has a specific reason to exist in your business, a defined role, a defined audience goal, and a realistic expectation of what it is supposed to deliver. I think the distinction I use is scattered versus diversified, and those two things look similar from the outside but are completely different on the inside. Break that down for us. Scattered means you are posting on multiple platforms with no clear purpose for each one, no system connecting them, and no strategy for how each one feeds the business. You are everywhere, and everywhere is hoping something sticks. Diversified means every platform has a defined job. YouTube is my long-form trust builder. LinkedIn is my B2B acquisition engine. My email list is my revenue and retention layer. YouTube Shorts is my top-of-funnel awareness tool. Each one knows what it is supposed to do, and I can measure whether it is doing that thing. That measurability piece is critical. When each platform has a defined role, you can evaluate its performance. You are not asking, is my LinkedIn worth having? You are asking, is my LinkedIn driving people into my long-form content at the rate I need? That is a question you can actually answer with data. What are the warning signs that you have drifted into scattered territory instead of diversified? 3 warning signs. First, you cannot explain in one sentence why you are on a specific platform and what it is supposed to do for your business. Second, you feel guilty about not posting enough on all of them, which usually means you have no sustainable system for any of them. Third, you cannot tell me what success looks like on any one of those platforms in terms of a specific business outcome. Those 3 tests are excellent, and I would add a 4th. If your content on platform B is just a copy-paste of your platform A content with no adaptation for the audience or format, that is also a scattered signal. Real diversification means your content is native to each platform, even when it originates from the same source material. So scattered is about volume without strategy. Diversified is about intention, role clarity, and measurement. Perfectly put. Let's shift into the most tactical section of today's episode, because I want people to walk away from this with a specific picture in their head. Dr. Maya, when you think about the future-proof creator stack in 2026, the configuration that actually makes sense given the environment we are operating in, what does that look like? Let me give you the core architecture, and then we can talk about why each element is there. The foundation, the non-negotiable core, is one long-form content engine. That is either a YouTube channel or a podcast, ideally both eventually, but you start with one. This is where you produce in-depth, valuable, trust-building content. It is where you demonstrate expertise, share real stories, and give people a reason to take you seriously. The reason you need this as the anchor is that long-form content has compound value. A video or episode you produce today can still be discovered a year from now. It builds a library. Short-form content has a much shorter shelf life. It performs for 48 to 72 hours, and then it is effectively invisible. Long-form gives you both depth and longevity. I cannot overstate how important that compound value is. Some of my best performing YouTube videos were published over a year ago, and they are still driving new subscribers every week. That kind of long-tail discovery does not happen with short-form. So the long-form engine is the anchor. What's next?
The second element is one short-form acquisition engine. In 2026, the most effective options for most creators are YouTube Shorts, LinkedIn short-form video, or TikTok, depending on your niche and your target audience. The job of this engine is very specific. Generate discovery. Bring new people into your world who have never heard of you before. The key decision here is not which short-form platform is the biggest, it is which short-form platform overlaps most with your ideal audience. If you are a B2B creator, LinkedIn Shorts and carousels are going to outperform TikTok for your specific goals, even if TikTok has more total users. That is such an important nuance. Biggest is not always most relevant. This was one of my early mistakes. I put energy into platforms with large audiences that did not match my target audience at all. I was getting views but not converting anyone into real followers or buyers. Relevance always beats reach when you're building a business. The third element is one owned audience asset. And as I said earlier, the email list is the gold standard here. But a private community, a paid newsletter, a Discord server you control, these all count. The defining characteristic is that you have direct access to your audience without needing to go through a platform's algorithm. And the fourth element? One community or conversion funnel. This is where you generate revenue that is not entirely dependent on ad rates or platform payout programs. That could be a paid community, a digital course, a service offer, a group coaching program, a high-ticket consulting funnel. The form it takes depends on your business model, but the purpose is the same, a revenue stream that you control and that is not at the mercy of an algorithm change. And when these four elements are working together, you have something really powerful. You have discovery, depth, ownership, and monetization, all operating in parallel, all feeding each other.
Jordan, Dr. Maya laid out that four-part stack: long-form engine, short-form acquisition, owned audience, and revenue funnel. Now, you had actually built this. What does the day-to-day reality look like? How does the automation layer make this manageable? The honest answer is that 3 years ago, this system would have required a team of 5 or 6 people to run properly. Today, I run almost all of it with a combination of AI tools, a part-time editor, and about 15 hours of my own time per week. 15 hours a week to run 4 active channels and an email list? That is remarkable. Let me walk you through how the tools connect. My anchor content, my long YouTube video, is produced over about 2 or 3 days. Once the video is published, it goes into a repurposing workflow. Opus Clip and similar tools automatically extract short clips with captions for YouTube Shorts. That content is scheduled and posted automatically. An AI tool takes the video transcript and generates a newsletter outline that I spend about 30 minutes refining and personalizing. That becomes my email that goes out to my list. Another AI pass takes the key points from the transcript and produces LinkedIn post drafts. I choose the best one, make small edits, and schedule it. And the audio from the video gets cleaned up and posted as a podcast episode, which goes out to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So by Tuesday of each week, one piece of long-form content has become 4 or 5 different touch points across 4 or 5 different platforms. And I have been personally involved for maybe 3 or 4 hours total, beyond the original production. That workflow is a perfect example of what I call the orchestration model. And orchestration is genuinely the master skill for content creators in 2026. Orchestration? Say more about that, because I hear that word a lot, but I want to make sure listeners understand what it actually means in this context. The orchestration means designing and managing a system of tools and processes that produce outputs at scale without you having to be directly involved in every step. The old content creator skill was production. How well can you write, edit, narrate, design, or film? The new skill is orchestration. How well can you set up, manage, and continuously improve a system that produces content for you? The creators who thrive long-term in this environment are not the ones who produce the most content by hand. They are the ones who build the best systems, and AI has made those systems accessible to solo operators in a way that was completely impossible even 3 years ago.
And the biggest shift in my own thinking was realizing that my most valuable contribution is not creating content. It is designing what the system produces, making the strategic decisions about what topics matter, what audience I serve, and what business outcomes I am optimizing for. The execution is increasingly automated. So the creator's role is shifting from content producer to content architect. Exactly. Content architect, systems designer, strategic decision maker. The manual production work is being commoditized rapidly. The judgment, strategy, and system design work is where the real value lives in 2026 and beyond. Which is actually exciting if you think about it, because it means the barrier to operating a sophisticated multi-platform business has never been lower. Anyone willing to learn the orchestration layer can build something that would have required a team just a few years ago. I love that note to end this section on. The barrier has never been lower, but only if you are willing to think like a systems builder instead of just a content creator. We are in the home stretch of episode 6 of Self-Proofing, AI, Money, and You. And I want to make sure every person listening leaves today with something they can actually do. Not just a new way of thinking about the problem, but a first action they can take this week or this month. Jordan, let's start with you. If someone listening is currently one platform dependent, they have a YouTube channel, it is working reasonably well, but today's conversation has made them realize they are exposed, what is the single most important thing they should do right now? My answer is very specific, and it is not start 5 new platforms. It is this: identify the one platform where your ideal clients or audience already spend time and start showing up there in the simplest possible way, using content you are already producing. Do not overthink it. Do not try to build a perfect presence on day one. Just pick one platform, take one piece of content you already have, adapt it for that platform's format, and post it. That first step breaks the inertia. Everything else builds from there. And simultaneously, start an email list, even if you have 0 subscribers today. Set up the form, write a simple welcome email, and put the link in your YouTube descriptions and your bio everywhere. Every day you wait is a day you are not building the one asset that truly belongs to you. That is so actionable. Dr. Maya, what is your action step? Mine connects directly to what Jordan just said. Build your email list aggressively, not eventually, now. Here's the thing. 500 people on an email list is worth more to your long-term business sustainability than 50,000 YouTube subscribers with no email opt-in, because those 500 people you can reach directly, any day, for any reason, on any platform. Your YouTube subscribers you can only reach when YouTube decides to show them your content. So give people a compelling reason to join your list, a free guide, a checklist, a resource pack, a mini course, something that solves a specific problem your audience has. Put that offer in front of every piece of content you produce, and treat growing that list with the same seriousness you treat growing your subscriber count. It is the only number in your business that is truly yours. Those are 2 incredibly concrete action steps, and here's my take to close us out. The goal of everything we talked about today is not to avoid platform risk. You cannot fully avoid it. Platforms will always have more power over your distribution than you do. The goal is to reach the point where losing one platform, even your biggest one, does not fundamentally hurt your business. That is what sustainability actually means, not zero risk, resilience in the face of risk. And building that resilience is entirely within your control if you start treating your content operation as a real business with multiple pillars instead of a single channel pipeline. Jordan, Dr. Maya, this was an exceptional conversation. Thank you both for your time, your stories, and your honesty about what the real landscape looks like. This was such a good one. Thank you for having me. Absolutely. And to anyone listening, take the action steps. The information without action is just entertainment. The value is in the doing. Could not have said it better. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Share it with the creator you know who is still running on one platform, and leave us a review. It makes an enormous difference in helping new listeners find the show. Next week on Self-Proofing, AI, Money, and You, we go deeper into platform-native content strategy, how to create content that performs natively on each platform without multiplying your workload. It's a practical one. You don't want to miss it. Thank you for being here. I'm Lala. Stay strategic, stay resilient, and I will see you next week.